Hello, I'm Bandicoot and welcome to unsettling point-and-click games from my childhood. That's a genre, right? It's adventure games. We're doing adventure games. Starting with Myst. Let me tell you about this nightmare. If you're like me and you were born in the 90s but you have one or two older cousins, you might have been exposed to certain media before you were really ready to enjoy it. Like Myst. I distinctly remember playing this at an older cousin's house despite being way too young to get anything other than the horrifyingly low-res bad endings.
You stupid!
In this game, you navigate a world of pre-rendered 3D backgrounds that look like 90s screensavers and solve mind-numbingly difficult puzzles to try and solve mysteries and avoid getting trapped in a book.
You're in the book now?
The people loved it. This was actually the best-selling computer game up until The Sims was released in 2002. The game was revolutionary. It was aimed at adults. You played it on a disc rather than in bundles of 3/4 floppies. And the graphics, although they've aged terribly, at the time was so advanced that they actually had trouble fitting this game onto a CD that would work in a single-speed disk drive, which was all most people had at home at the time. Back then, computers were still kind of for rich folks, but becoming more popular, and apparently people would buy computers just to be able to play this game that their friends were talking about. It's like boomers getting Netflix just to watch The Crown. This was that. Point-and-click adventure games with puzzles were pretty popular in the 90s, but usually aimed at kids. You had a couple big studios churning them out like Sierra and LucasArts that had been in the game since the Tex Parser days. By the late 90s though, the landscape was changing rapidly and we started to see adventure games not really keep up. LucasArts, which had helped pioneer the genre, stopped producing adventure games altogether after the resounding failure of one game that did very well critically, but was such a commercial flop that we received it for free with a bunch of other games when we bought a home computer. Jump right back into my nightmare. It's Grim Fandango.
Buenos dias.
Yeah, I found this game unsettling. This is an art style that now I have a cultural reference point for. Book of the Dead came out and basic girls be drawing sugar skulls on their faces every Halloween. Like, I get it. But if you're watching this in the US and you don't know, Australia didn't get Halloween until like 2004, and we don't share a border with any South American countries. So this style at that time here would have gone over people's heads. As a kid, I just found it weird and scary. Contextually, it's 1998 and games are a lot more expensive to make. There's also a lot more competition, and as we enter the age of the internet, can we really expect people to want to sit for hours trying to nut out a puzzle when Googling things became possible?
Oh my god, is it just pointing downwards in the middle where I said 84 years ago that was going to be? I'm not sure if I'm really happy or really angry right now.
By the early 2000s, adventure games were pretty much dead for the English-speaking world, though that was not necessarily the case overseas. As games as an art form progressed into the 21st century, a lot of very smart people began to talk and subsequently argue about whether games could be understood as stories in the same way that you would analyze a film or another piece of media. This is pretty interesting considering how adventure games made their way back into the mainstream with narrative titles like The Walking Dead. In this game, you the player make choices about what you say and do, which impacts the story and your experience. More recently, this style of gameplay was used very successfully in Detroit Become Human in 2018. Using these choices instead of straight puzzles has two big advantages. One, it fosters replaying of the game, and two, it keeps the player immersed by a perceived connection to the story. If you ask me, games are made or broken by how immersive they are. When we talk about what gameplay is, one thing that's always been consistent is that games are immersive. They take you out of your everyday for a little bit. In the early days of Myst, game makers had to be less concerned with what transportive journey can I take my audience on and more concerned with what can we produce with the tech that we have. This is why anyone who's played Detroit will be able to tell you what it's about, but nobody knows whatever the story of Myst is supposed to be. Except for this idiot, but oh my god, we are not getting into that today. So the adventure game genre is alive again, but it's pivoted on what makes it immersive for an audience. More subgenres and indie studios mean that the genre is more diverse and therefore more resilient. That's all for today. Thanks guys, see you next time.